We meaning the U.S.
Yeah.
Can I just quickly say, I love the point that you make about, conspiracy. You can't help but think to yourself, because it was the first, nation of a people of color to gain their independence. Whether or not this is like, you will now be forever penalized for even beginning to think that you could be a free and independent people and nation. It's like, how dare you essentially challenge white supremacist rule and thinking? So you will pay henceforth and
And
forever.
they have been paying since 1804, right? And I mentioned the year again to put it in perspective, that you've got African countries or other colonized countries that have Black people who have gotten independence, let's say, in the 20th century, right? So we're talking about in the 1940s, in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 30s. I mean, just in that period. But when you look at Haiti, you're talking about the turn, right? The turn of the century, 1804, the turn of the century.
Phyllis, you wanted to say something.
Yes, Jennifer, I wondered if you got an opportunity to speak with any of the Haitian people that were there, any of the families.
Mm-hmm. So we were very fortunate to be accompanied by Patrick Gaspard. Patrick Gaspard was the ambassador to South Africa for President Barack Obama, and he is a Haitian American. I say that we were fortunate to be accompanied by him in part because he has such vast knowledge of Haitian-U.S. relations and overall just the treatment of people of color hailing from African countries, by the United States, but also because, as I mentioned, he's a Haitian American. So he spoke the native language, and he was able to serve as a translator for us on the trip. And so through him, we talked with the Haitian persons at the border, and we learned about their fears. We learned about their fears of being deported and suffering persecution at the hands of the Haitian government. We learned about their just desperation, their desperate pleas for, while they were at the border, to be treated fairly, to be given, a fair and wholesome meal, to be given the opportunity to shower, to have some of their basic needs met. And they let their needs be known. They didn't hold back. We learned how thankful they were that Reverend Sharpton had brought a delegation forward and that people were paying attention to their crisis. But most of all, we learned how scared they are, how scared they are to be deported to Haiti.
And what about asylum seekers versus refugees versus regular immigrants? I mean, this is where I see things getting very knotted up when people try to explain the treatment of these people. Can you speak to that?
Tony, this is just another one of those instances where, as we've seen in our society, people will create narratives to suit their purposes. And so the term migrant is a term that is used to refer to persons who are seeking to come to another country in search of, quote, a better way of life. They're coming from countries, moving from one place to another because they are seeking better working conditions. That is a term that is used to, migrant is a term used to refer to people who are moving from one country to another because they're seeking a better life, better work conditions, better healthcare, that type of thing. Asylum is a term that is used to refer to persons who are fleeing their country because they fear persecution at the hands of government. They fear for their safety. They often are considered refugees because they're trying to get out and seek a life in another country where they can be safe from persecution. So let's apply to the Haitian people. If I refer to you as a migrant, then you're not at risk. You just are, go live in your country and deal with the impoverished conditions, deal with subpar wages, deal with lack of work. but don't come here because we've got our own problems, right? If you're seeking asylum, then we can look at you with like with a lens of humanity, and see that you're at risk of being killed, of being thrown into prison, and we need to have compassion for you. So asylum is centering on a compassionate heart. The migrant worker, or the migrant, I should say, it's like, oh, you just want a better way of life. We can't do that here because we're struggling on our own, so let's send you back. So these are terms that are used to go with the narrative that wants to be propped up. If we refer to Haitians as migrants, then we don't lean in, as Maria was helping us to appreciate, to how the United States has actually contributed to the state of despair that Haiti has been in now for decades. We don't own that, and we don't own the United States' role and responsibility in that.
So what do we do? What can we do? We're describing this problem. You would think that the Biden administration would have been more responsive, or responsive in a way that looked humane. So what can we do here in New York City? Or is there anything we can do to further this, so to speak?
So the first thing that I'll say
treatment.
is, right, what I'll say is, let's just begin with, in America, we are hopefully, earnestly, sincerely engaged in a moment of racial reconciliation. And with that, if we are, then it begins with acknowledging the harms that have been visited upon people of a darker hue. And that is not just limited to what we've done to African Americans in this country, but it should be inclusive of what we've done to people across this earth, across the world. And so that's where we begin first and foremost. And if we're honest about that, then we look at how the United States and its policies towards Haiti have served to essentially try to keep Haiti in a state of dependence upon the United States. How we've made our aid dependent upon, what Haiti will and will not produce agriculturally, how and where it will and will not trade. Essentially, our nation has put handcuffs on Haiti. We need to look at that and remove those handcuffs. It is by design that America has kept Haiti in a place of dependence and servitude. But like America has done with its basic social safety net for African Americans, it purports to be giving Haitians what they need to get to a better place, all the while knowing that structurally it is providing relief in a way that keeps Haiti in a place, in a space of servitude. So let's get rid of these handcuffs. Let's acknowledge what we've done, the harms that have endured, get rid of these handcuffs, and do what we should be doing, helping to strengthen the economy as well as the democracy.
We also have to take account for what we've done, right? What we translated to other countries, because other countries are treating Haitians the same way that we are treating Haitians. I'll give you an example. I think the most commonly known example is the Dominican Republic. Haiti and the Dominican Republic share an island, right? They're on the same landmass. However, there are rules that restrict Haitians' movements on one side of the island, because technically it's another country. And the treatment of Haitians on that side of the country, when they're allowed to stay, is something that is deplorable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this conversation can leave you somewhat speechless. It leaves you speechless.
And sad.
Yeah, because to your point, Maria, yes, Haiti does have that. There is this despicable thing that goes on when I don't even like saying it, but with our own people, who's good, who's bad, all of this stratification. It is, and it's evil. I'll just put it to you that way. That's how I see it. It's just downright evil. Phyllis, you were going to say something, because we're going to have to wrap in a few seconds. But
No.
I would love to go positive, but
Well, I can't think of anything positive. It just seems as if it's part of our culture. I'm going to go a little further and say it's probably the part of human culture. It's not a very positive part of who we are as people, but it seems that people are always trying to find someone to keep down, all right, to put down.
And the underdog.
The underdog, always.
That, right.
And does that come from us not recognizing our own values and wanting to see someone that we have to look at as less than so that we can feel good enough? And I think that's something that I always think about when I hear conversations where someone has been designated the underdog, treated as such, and others jump on the bandwagon to support it.
Even with all this, right? Even with structural racism, even with the role that the U.S., that other nations have played in trying to keep Haitians down, specifically, more generally, people of color, there is a resiliency in Black folks, as Jennifer says, people of a darker hue, in Haitians, that cannot be outdone. And that resiliency is why there were 15 to 20,000 people at the border. That resiliency is why you have people coming out on boat, on
walking
foot,
from Chile, walking from Chile.
Yes, and it's that resiliency, because they've been trying to marginalize Haiti since the beginning, and they have not been able to do that, which drives their anger and I think increases their policies. But it's that resiliency that keeps it going.
And I would say that is probably a great place for us to end, but I would like to encourage our viewers to learn more about the issue and to strive for some understanding. But you are right, Maria. Thank you. It is that resiliency. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing your story, your journey. And we will see you next time on Brooklyn Savvy.